Hey guys, good evening. Welcome back to the Muddy Creek podcast. So Todd got his times wrong, or either we got his times wrong for him. It's probably on my part, but he'll be in a moment. I want to give a shout out to everybody in chat because normally I don't get a chance to do that. Um, Diane, Tammy, Amber, Pat, Carl. Um, let's see. I have to say Carl twice because his mouth is super big. William, Lavani, Paramedic, John, um, David, Jeff, Bobby, and I think that's about and Gary, and I think that's about it. I want to appreciate everybody for jumping in. Anyone that's in the group, when I put that post out in the group, I wasn't talking about shutting down the podcast. I was talking about shutting down the Facebook group because there's not a lot of activity, and I'll tell you why. Because every time my people go out in the field, I'm always here on doing a podcast. And right now, my husband and his friends are out in the field, and I'm here doing a podcast. So there's never anything for me to post about being in the field because I'm always in the podcast when everybody's in the field. Isn't that how it goes, Don? Don just showed me his cat. His cat needs Jenny Craig. So terrible.
It's the winter, just winter fat.
No, she needs
Could
Jenny
be
Craig.
treats. Yeah, it could be treats too. He does like his treats. I just drove 25 miles to get him treats.
Yes. You said you got the green treats. I said it probably tastes like a cow's butt, the green ones.
Well, it says salmon flavored.
But you can't have the green salmon flavored treats.
that's the name of them, greenies. They're all green, all the different. You know what they are, don't you? Have you seen? Do you have greenies down there?
They don't get the greenies. They
Oh,
just
okay.
I
They're
just throw
made
them
for
over the.
cleaning the teeth and freshening the breath and all that.
Yeah, Pat's got it right for the greenies. Salmon's not supposed to be green, homie. So what's going on? What's new in the Sasquatch world while we're waiting on Todd?
Well, they're always up in my area. I have recordings, and I get them just about every night up there. I went up into their area. I was getting some firewood up on the hill, and I went for a hike, just checking animal tracks out. And I go up to, it's the top of a hill I go to, and I know they're in this area somewhere. But I don't go looking for them. I just kind of look up in the trees and look around. But they know that I'm looking around for them. And if I look up in the trees too long, I will get a whoop or a snap of a branch behind me. And I don't know. I think it's just they want me to stop looking up in the trees.
You were talking about flying squirrels. I don't know if you've seen it
Yep.
in the groups, but Pat posted a thermal in some of the groups about the flying squirrels, and she got one on tape with like 10 deer in the background. And I know before you were coming on air, you were telling me about your cat eating the flying squirrels. And that
Yeah.
made me think of that video. I don't know if you've seen it, but that's a pretty cool video.
I'll have to check that out. No, I
Yeah,
had two cats years ago. The bees used to come in and drill holes in the birch trees, and the sap would run out. And at night, all the flying squirrels would be up there, and they would push each other out of the way. And sometimes they would knock one right off the tree, and it would come down like a parachute. And these two cats used to sit under that tree and just wait for them to come
little
down.
savages. I think Pat said you had a little bit of feedback. Do you hear it now? Hey, Selena, do you hear the feedback now, Pat?
Do I have feedback?
He says there. She says there. or a bunch of, I guess they're getting feedback from us. Can you hear it now?
We turn down. Is this any better? Can you still hear me?
How's it sound now? Yes, a little from Don. How's it sound now, Rusty? So, one of the things that when Todd jumps on, one of the interesting things about him, he had his first encounter on a military base in Oregon back in 1993 in springtime. And I find that really, Diane says we sound good now. And I find that really interesting because, me being outside of Fort Bragg back during the day, Fort Bragg had, I guess it's still there, it's just like a ghost town now, had Pope Air Force Base. And on the back of Post Air Force Base, there was a road called Manchester Road. If they used to nickname it Monster Road because they had sightings of Bigfoot on that road. And I found it very interesting. So I do think they like to hang out at uh, the military bases, which makes really a perfect habitat because most of them, what are they? You have a small area that's populated, the rest of it's woods. Is I know Fort Bragg, you could go on forever and not see anything, and those back roads are just really isolated, and there are so many dirt roads just breaking off, going into a really dense, you know, was this perfect habitat. Plus, you got the Cape Fear River going through there. So, I mean, we've had a lot of um, sightings in that area that go back out, actually out to the 1970s. But I think it was really interesting that they called Manchester Road Monster Road and it's got a little nickname. I didn't know about that till here recently.
Oh, so they've been having sightings there for a long time.
Oh yeah, I mean Spring Lake would be a perfect area. That place is just it's nothing but some really poor roads and a few subdivisions in the middle of a area that's just prone to flooding, and it's right outside of Fort Bragg. But Spring Lake is just that would be a prime area. We also had a sighting in the Falcon area here. Um, one actually, if you read the BFRO report, it talks about seeing a light in the background on at exit 7 on the interstate. That's my sister's porch light. I told my sister, I said, you had Bigfoot coming through your backyard according to this report. And she's like, don't tell me that. But there was that exit 7 on I-95 and Bigfoot, the guy's going down I-95. He's coming up the exit 7, and the Bigfoot walks across the interstate, and he sees it in this tractor trailer. The brake lights of the tractor trailer. And he says, if you look in the distance, you'll see a porch light. And I'm like, wait a minute, exit 7. I'm like, I told my sister, I said, Bigfoot walked through your backyard. She said, "Don't you ever," because she's not a believer. She picks on me, but not so bad anymore. But she says, "Don't you ever tell me that thing went through my backyard." So Todd, good to see you, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
I am
Hey,
so
Todd.
sorry.
I am hearing an echo in mine and Todd's voice. I don't know if that was the feedback.
Okay, would that be on my end?
It may be because I'm hearing it from Todd too. It could be on my end, but
I'm just going through using my phone at this point.
okay. Do you hear
Okay,
any
how's it
echo or
sound
a
now?
feedback, Todd?
I do not. You sound clear.
Todd,
Okay.
William, how does Todd sound? You said you had lots of echo. Well, we're gonna bad echo. Bad echo. Who has the bad echo? Is it me, Todd, or Don? You said it's good now.
I
Todd,
don't
can
know.
you hear me?
Are you getting it from me? I could maybe switch to my earbuds.
No,
See if that
I'm
might work.
not. I'm not getting it now from you, Todd.
Okay.
Okay, half is saying it's coming from Don, half is saying it's coming from Todd. So
Oh.
he says Todd is better now. So we're going to roll with it. So, Todd, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're really busy. Also, before we get started, I want to thank you for your service. I was looking into your bio, very incredible bio, very incredible research that you've been doing. You served the country for over 20 years and got a retirement. Um, you actually had your first experience in April of 1993 in Oregon. Now, you were raised in Oregon, correct?
That is correct. Yes, I was born in the suburbs of Portland and have lived there most of my 60 plus years. Just recently, having relocated to Arkansas. Uh, don't ask me why, but I'm loving it. So,
You relocate. Well, there's a big difference. Arkansas is a beautiful, beautiful area. We actually have a lot of people in our chat tonight from Arkansas. So that's a big change. That's a long way from home. Now, I have a habit of slaughtering people's bios. I do not want to slaughter yours. Yours is extensive, is very impressive, and you have pushed on with over, I think, 31 years of research. If I sound a little congested, I apologize. Um,
no, sound fine.
and you really pushed forward, and your wife is a part of your team too, and she also is a researcher, correct?
That's
Oh, wait,
right. In fact, we part of the reason I'm here in Arkansas, we actually met at a conference in Mena, Arkansas, where I was a speaker, and her and her family showed up. Little did I know that they were very interested in the Bigfoot phenomena, and well, the rest is history.
that's awesome. That's awesome. A couple that Bigfoots together stays together. Just saying. So let's just go into your background, what you want people to know about you and your research. Then let's kind of go into your first encounter and what happened behind that. You have some very interesting theories. You have a very extensive research behind you, and I would like to get a lot of that out there. And eventually, you'll start getting questions from um, the uh, the chat tonight because I know they're very interested in what you have to say too.
Well, great. Where do I begin? Again, I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, and I think it goes without saying that it's pretty hard to live back there in what I consider kind of ground zero for Bigfoot sightings to not hear of the phenomena. But having been a very avid hunter, hiker, fisherman, mountain climber, and spent a tremendous amount of time outdoors there, I had never seen anything that would lead me to believe that these things actually existed. So I was not a believer at all. In fact, I guess you'd call me agnostic. I really didn't care one way or the other. But it was one of those things you'd have to see to believe, and I can certainly check that block. But just as to my background. Yeah, I spent a little over 20 years in the Army and retired in 2019. So I've been retired 5.5 years or so. And let's say I have a degree in multidisciplinary studies from Grantham University. Gosh, I don't know. I love getting outdoors, and it's a whole new paradigm now with what I experienced and what I've learned over the course of 32 years now. So yeah, we could just lead into my initial sighting because it relates to the military. In fact, I was a combat engineer, and for those who are familiar with combat engineering, a lot of what we do involves the use of high explosives, whether it's dynamite, plastic explosives, ammonium nitrate, depending on the particular training set and the scenario. We would use different types of explosives. And on that particular day, April 3rd of 1993, it was a Saturday, and it was a fairly decent day out, a little cold, but clear and sunny. And we had permission to go access this private timber land, and at that time owned by, well, I'll just say a large lumber company that had that area, and they had a number of gravel quarries throughout their pretty vast holdings. So we had permission to use 3 of those quarries where we would practice our trade, and that would be, setting off some very large explosives. I don't think anything we did that day was involved less than 100 pounds, and in some cases, several hundred pounds of explosives. So we're talking some, little minor earthquake, big mushroom cloud kind of stuff. So we had detonated at 2 of the 3 gravel quarries, and had set our charges at the final quarry, a cratering charge of 250 pounds or so ammonium nitrate. We lit the fuses and got in our vehicles and convoyed out of there. And I was a passenger sitting behind the driver in just behind the lead vehicle. So this would be a Humvee. And I'm sorry, let me turn that down. I don't know why that's going off. But anyhow, I had looked out to, I had the window down. It was a fairly nice day, and because I had hunted and hunted that area specifically, the Saddle Mountain unit, for both deer and elk, it was just natural for me to look about the countryside for wildlife. Well, got a little more than I had planned on. We rounded this corner as we're again trying to get away from this impending explosion behind us. And as we did, the second blast site came into view. And as it did, I noticed 3 very dark figures standing right out in the open in this rock quarry where we had detonated a considerable amount of C4 plastic explosive, perhaps an hour or so earlier. And so I the first thing that came to my mind, because I just thought maybe I thought, what are those people doing down there? And I didn't even hardly get the thought out of my mind when I realized what I was looking at were not, in fact, cheap people. Certainly not human, I would say. And by that, it was not only the silhouettes that they presented were very stark. Them being dark black against a very light kind of a concrete gray basalt rock cliff. So they presented a very, very clear contrast to the background. And the size of them were far larger than human, and in the proportions, the arms that reached all the way down to their knees, all 3 of them. The legs were disproportionately long in comparison with a human torso as well. But it was what they were doing too. Like I mentioned, there were 3 of them. The tallest standing in the middle at probably 8.5, 9 feet in height would have been my guess, easily 4 feet across at the shoulders. That one stood there very still, but the 2, I hate to use the word shorter, because they were easily 7.5 feet tall, again, built like bodybuilders. But those 2 on either side of the larger one proceeded to sway, if you will, back and forth, rocking side to side, shifting their weight from one foot to the other, and they did this the entire time I'm watching them. And as they did this, these long pendulous arms, as you can imagine, were swinging at the knee level. And as for time, I watched them. I estimated about 25 seconds. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to most eyewitness encounters, and it's pretty good period of time to get focused on it. After this 25 seconds expired, we rounded the corner. We got not too much further. We ended up at the safety site where we would wait for that explosion and go back and check our work. I tried my darndest to get another look at them. I went as far as I dared away from the group. We were not allowed, because of the obvious danger involved with what we're doing, to be out of eyesight of the main unit. Went as far as I dared. Unfortunately, I couldn't see them, but as I was standing there gazing off in the distance, someone called out my name, and I looked over, and it was Sergeant Martin. He said, "What are you looking at?" I responded, "Oh, nothing." And he proceeded to come up and got right up to me and kind of looked left and right to make sure nobody was within ear range, because the next thing he said was, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at that second blast site." And I'm like, "Oh, please say what you're going to say." Of course, I said, "I don't know, Jeff. What did you see?" And again, he looked to make sure nobody was in earshot, and he said, "I saw 3 huge hair-covered Bigfoot, I guess." And of course, at that, yeah, I said, "I saw him too. I saw him too, Jeff." And so, it was kind of it's kind of nice to know that somebody else had that experience, the same experience I had, but with or without his corroboration, it wouldn't have changed a thing for me. I can't unsee what I saw that day. And I should point out, about a month later, we had 2 more soldiers come forward, independent of one another, and admit to having witnessed what Sergeant Martin and I had. So it's a unique sighting amongst sightings, and trust me, I've investigated scores of them. But to have multiple animals, for instance, is usually it's a single individual. But that's sort of rare. Multiple eyewitnesses, and then of course the very activity we were involved with. I mean, we were blowing up. We were rocking their world pretty much, and they were coming out to investigate and try to figure out what was going on. And yeah, that was over 30 years ago, and I've been researching ever since. And it literally, those 25 seconds changed the entire course of my life. And frankly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been an interesting journey for sure.
Do do you find that, I know a part of your research and your effort is to have a protection forum, and that you've been working on that. Do you think part of that was the fact that you were standing out there and you were detonating C4 and other explosives out there on their homeland, and that affected you when you
No, I
realized
don't
what
think it
was
was
going on?
so much the nature of what we were doing. I mean, let's face it, there's 101 ways to die. That certainly is one for sure. But no, it's really a product of kind of coming to terms with the odds of that entire thing happening. And to me specifically, I mean, had it been 5 or 10 minutes one way or the other, had I been looking a different direction or engaged in a conversation with the driver, well, it was so many things had to come together to make that happen. And so I had to really ponder, what certainly has to be a purpose in why I saw them the day I did, and I have just came to the conclusion that these things are just absolutely incredible. It's an incredible species. They do exist. I don't believe they do. I know they do. They're obviously few in number. Um, and to the extent of the health of the species, we really don't know. I mean, people can conjecture all the time, all they want about, oh, they're perfectly fine, leave them alone. But we really don't know that. And it's kind of a romantic notion to just make that sort of a claim without any evidence of, if you can't tell me how many there are today, uh, or better yet, how many there were 100,000 years ago, then we don't know. So I formed the American Primate Conservancy on October 15th of 2000, excuse me, on October 1st, 2015, for the research, discovery, recognition, uh, and eventual protection of this species. I want to make sure that my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids, as rare of a chance as it may be, that they have that same opportunity that I did. And I couldn't live with myself if I just sat on my hands and watched this species go to extinction. We don't know if they're threatened or endangered, but I'd rather err on the side of caution in that regard. And so, yes, I've been working in a number of different ways to try to get protections put in place. It's very extremely difficult, as you can imagine, without being able to produce physical proof, as in genetic DNA, which is pretty much the way it's going to have to be, unless one of these things turns themselves in. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, so that's where we're going with it. But the recognition piece is where we're at right now. Also working on that. There are certain passages in, for instance, the 1973 Endangered Species Act, which actually does refer to recognizing and protecting unclassified species, as well as in the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN out of Stockholm, Sweden, which monitors the health of endangered and threatened animals, also has certain clauses that will technically accept the existence of a creature without a body, a specimen, if you will. So I'm working that end of things because, until we get them recognized, it's going to be very difficult to get protections put in place.
Todd, do you well, nice to meet you, Todd, by the way.
Yeah, likewise.
Do you think the population's going up?
How would I know? How would you know? How would anybody know?
Well, I always had like a theory that, when we got to this country, we cleared this country of all the woods. And I think we dispersed them. And a lot of sightings back then came from the swamps and the mountains. But now that these woods are coming back, they're 300 to 400 years old now. I'm under the just from the sightings that I take from Massachusetts and Maine, they're on an increase. The sightings. I don't know if that's people talking about it more, or it seems like the species is populating.
Well, again, there's so many moving parts there. I mean, certainly with the advent of social media, a lot of things get amplified, and Bigfoot's no exception. When I started this, there really was no official internet, right coming in about that time. and it's when you're talking about the density of a particular species, we tend to take into consideration how often we have encounters, how often we run into them, and it's really easy to get down that rabbit hole where you think, well, they must hibernate because we don't see so many in the winter, when in fact we're the ones that aren't out there in the winter as much, you know. So when you factor in the human factor, oh, they must be nocturnal because we don't see them so much in the daytime or what have you. Again, we're not usually out at night, as a general rule, and B, we don't have the capability of seeing well at night without the aid of some technology. Whereas I truly believe they do. I believe they have nocturnal vision. In fact, I'm certain of it. But to answer your question, what is the health of the species? Is it getting stronger? Is it getting weaker? I would venture to guess that more than likely the species is diminishing, and I say that not just because of the continued encroachment of mankind into their habitat, but what happens in certain cases is the species gets segregated, if you will. They get split up, and over time you get pockets of groups of these things, which under natural circumstances could have possibly been a very large, much larger group. And that goes to the gene pool issue, and that's where it's very concerning for me, because you don't have to watch the last of a species to vanish for the species to be extinct, quote unquote. There is such a thing as technical extinction, which once a population of almost any species gets below a threshold of just under 300 or so, the species is doomed. There's too much inbreeding. The gene pool becomes too small. That brings on mutations. That brings on disease, immune system issues, and whatnot. So I don't hear a lot of encounters that involve large groups of these, for instance. So, I mean, the fact that they're being seen generally as individuals tells me that there's a fair chance that they're getting dispersed to. I put it the other way. Does it make sense that they're becoming more coalesced? I doubt it. Not in this day and age.
I do get what you're saying there, because down in southeast Massachusetts, a lot of the sightings that come from the Hockomock Swamp. I grew up right on the edge of the Hockomock Swamp, and all the sightings there were gray. And I was talking to Will Jevning about that.
Talk in just a moment. My dog's just freaking out here, and I don't know if you can hear her or not, but I'm gonna let her in here. So you don't have to do that. Go ahead, please.
I was saying a lot of the sightings that come from that area, the species are gray. And talking to Will Jevning about that, he told me it's probably a genetic thing there. And maybe it is because they have to live in that area. But down in southeast Mass, these things are seen everywhere. They don't need much woods to hide in. They just need a place where humans don't go. But there is a genetic thing going on down there where they're all gray. A lot of sightings are gray in this area.
So, I hadn't heard that, but there's a lot of variations, I'm sure.
A lot of my sightings that I investigate are all word of mouth. I don't, people know what I do, and I have a big family down there, so I get calls from down the Mass. I'm up in Maine now, and people around here are starting to realize what I do, and a lot of people go to the town hall and say, "Hey, I got this creature in my yard," and they send them to me.
Yeah, I
So,
get. It's amazing how many encounter stories I get randomly like that. I can't tell you how many times I'd be having it be in a public place and having a chat with one individual about the subject, and there always seems to be some ear perked up in the background, kind of picking up and on what I'm saying, and I can't count how many times people said one of two things. Like, it's either you're probably going to think I'm crazy, or you know who you need to talk to. And I'm like, okay, where's my pen? And I get tons of accounts that way. And lately, I've been engaged in doing some as a means of getting a little more established here in Arkansas. I've been putting together some town hall meetings. Where we'll get anywhere from a couple dozen to 70 plus people show up in a small venue, and I just tell them a little bit about my background, and then open it up for discussion. And it's funny, people really are a little shy to say anything on a hot mic, but afterward, oh yeah, I can't take 5 steps and somebody's cutting me off. Hey, wait, I got to tell you about this, or hey, this happened to my grandpa, or this happened to me when I was a kid, or this, and so that's been a pretty helpful tool for me, is these town hall meetings. You get a lot of stuff when people realize you're just, average Joe doing some not so average things.
So, question: when you say recognition, I understand that part. The protection part, I don't understand, because it's very hard to go out and get a count on these things. Where would that protection begin? How would that? What type of protection are you looking at? Not to shoot them, or are you looking at, if you see them in a particular area, to have a break from that area, from the civilian world, and not,
Yeah, there's a number of scenarios with regard to that. Obviously, I think the first step is, and again, it's going to take some official recognition by the Department of the Interior, which here in the United States runs, of course, the Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife, and a number of other outdoor bureaus. And
got to start with education. People have to be educated on what to do and that they're there.
Well, and education is a large proponent of what the Conservancy does, which not only involves these town hall meetings, but we've put together. For instance, I worked with the Audubon Society back in Portland to put together 3 Bigfoot campouts for kids, and mostly inner city kids who have never really slept outside of their bedroom at home. Kind of a hard way to get broke into camping, by having people tell you there's monsters out there. But it's we've opened some minds, put it that way. Get these kids out in the woods where they have no cell phone reception, and get a bonfire going, and they eat it up. But I've done that with kids. I've spoken at several universities over the years, different symposiums. But yeah, education is key, no doubt about it. But getting back to the protection piece, I envision a couple of things. Like I said, first and foremost, put something in writing on the books with teeth that states that the harming, harassing, or killing of any of these this species has a punishment attached to it. And one of the ways I've been working that angle, which others have not, is to put together a draft proposal, an act, if you will, working with First Nations people to, uh, you know, people have gone to the Department of the Interior and made their case and tried to get protections put in place, and it's always been a strikeout. But I'm kind of coming at it from the other end, because from a historical standpoint, Native Americans have been dealing with this species for better than 20,000 years, and we've been over here about 300. So go figure. So working with 5 different tribes, I'm trying to put together. Well, I've got an act put together. I put together a template. It's kind of a plug and play. They can put the tribe in and whatever they call them. For instance, the Omaha, uh, uh, how did the Omaha Indigenous Peoples Act, or what they call them. Excuse me, I'm not going to have this, guys. Sorry, we got a new puppy, and well,
no worries.
They're it's WrestleMania around here, guys. Knock it off. Sorry about that. But anyway, working with these tribes, if we can get these on board, and I'm really hoping that it'll catch on like wildfire. The thing is, each of these reservations, and there are hundreds of them across the U.S. and Canada, each of those are considered their own independent nation. And as such, they have their own laws that they can enact, at least in regards to what happens on the reservation. So they have that sort of autonomy separate from the U.S. government. And my hope is that if we get, dozens, if not hundreds of these reservations to sign on to this, maybe working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, for instance, get the word out. It's a win-win for the natives, because it not only it bolsters their culture, for instance, because the Bigfoot has been very much part of their culture for many years, and it puts them on the books as being really the ones that are leading the call for their protection. So that's one way of going about it. And then once once we get dozens, if not hundreds, of these reservations on board, then you go to the Bureau, the Interior Department, and say, well, you might not believe it, or you might find that it's a little difficult, hard to swallow, or perhaps embarrassing. Of course, their big concern is how taxpayers view it. But you know what? You're surrounded by all these reservations that have already signed on for this, so they've taken that sting out of the equation as far as humiliation, or because to not accept what they're putting down is to, in essence, call them liars, and I don't think you want to be on that team. So that's just one way. Now, we talked about reservations. Another scenario I can envision is that some land appropriate for the habitat and resources that they require be set aside, in so much as it becomes a no man's land, a step up from a wildlife preserve, if you will, but a sanctuary for them that they can live their way of life undisturbed, and humans have to respect that and stay out of it. So whether it's a national park or just a large tract of remote land, doesn't matter. But if it fits the bill for what this species needs, and they can live somewhat without interference from we Homo sapiens, then I think that would be a good way to go, or a potential. And again, you can't force them to be there. You can't keep them there. But I think over time, when they realize that the humans are not going into that area, it's just going to naturally become a safe haven for them.
Humans are little, lack of a better word, humans are little assholes. I mean, we go out and I mean, we trophy kill, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. It's not my thing. But that's my thing. If you're trying to protect them, my opinion is the more we put our hands on something, our intentions are good to start with, but down the road it turns bad, and we do more harm than good, which is why we have First Nations now. When they have their own land, we push them there, and we put a lot of people in poverty, and we took a lot away from people. I don't. And another question comes to mind that was in chat, so let me get that out of the way. So, if they have laws to protect them, at what point can a person attempt to defend themselves to them? Has that been thought out, or do you have thoughts on that? And I have one more question. Poor Tammy has asked this twice. She wants to know if those were the only three you ever saw. So I'm sorry that's a lot on you, but
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. Now, so uh, yes, obviously there would be caveats for self-defense. Any animal can be dangerous under certain circumstances, and the species certainly from a physical standpoint would have no problem dispatching a human, and that kind of goes to the whole stereotyping of these things. I don't want to get off on a tangent other than to say I think the every individual in this species has its own personality, and we got to remember that. Um, it's no different than you going down to a shopping mall and go people watching. There's so much variety in not just facial expressions and different colored hair and body size and shape, and along with that, different types of attitudes. And we know uh, we've got really good people in this in the human species, and we've got some really bad
I'll
actors
set
as well.
plenty of assholes, yeah.
So yeah, so I think it's just when it comes to providing them a sanctuary that is not accessible to people, it's a matter of you'd say, oh, we touch it and it goes bad or whatever. I think it's a matter of really weighing the consequences of doing something versus not doing anything, and letting
I respect that.
sort
I
of
respect
so
that.
to sort
Yeah.
of say let nature take its course. But to the extent as we are the pretty much the guardians of this planet, that we have a responsibility to do what we can. Moving on to your next question, are these the only ones I have encountered? No. I will say this: it took me 28 years, no, 29 years for me to lay eyes on them again. Now, bear in mind, encounters come in a lot of different flavors. Okay. there's everything from audible vocalization, so tree knocking, supposedly, um, uh, even smell encounters, of which I've had one very close range smell encounter. Um, Obviously, finding tracks, seeing activity, different sort of engineered structures out there, if you will. But of course, the holy grail is to be actually lay eyes on them. I was given an opportunity back in 2022, I believe, to travel to the Omaha Reservation in Nebraska. And I had been communicating with this group for 3 years. They call themselves Res Squatching. And they had sent me a number of videos that I found intriguing that they had taken it. But by and large, these videos were of a phenomenon that I had put into the category of paranormal, supernatural. In other words, should they have some sort of ability to generate light or amplify light? To my knowledge, it was beyond scientific explanation. And I kind of wrote it off. I did some research on it, but I did not find enough to really convince me that what people call eye shine was a real thing until I went out. I was a guest on the reservation for a week. It was around October time frame. The leaves are on the ground pretty much, and so going to Nebraska to look for Bigfoot was like never on my radar because I envision Nebraska as nothing but flat wheat fields, cornfields, rice, whatever. And, for the most part, I was correct, but I would come to find that where the reservation is situated, which is right along the Missouri River, which separates Nebraska and Iowa, is very heavily wooded, certainly along the shores of the Missouri River. And so I went out for a week, and I have to say what I experienced, probably one of the highlights of my 30 plus years of research. If somebody had came to me and said, hey, how would you like to see Bigfoot tonight? I'll take you someplace and we'll see it. I might patronize them, humor them, if you will, and okay, sure, I've got nothing else to do. But yeah, it just doesn't happen that way, right? Furthermore, if somebody said, how would you like to see Bigfoot every night for the next 5 nights in 2 different locations? I would have recommended they get some serious counseling because, by God, it just doesn't work like that. If it did, I would sell tickets and I'd be a rich man, right? Well, I got my butt handed to me because we went out Monday through Friday nights. This is during the height of COVID, by the way. And I only bring that up because the entire reservation was locked down, or at least the main village there called Mays was under quarantine. And so there weren't a lot of people out, not that there would be around midnight anyway, but one of my first go-tos is rule out being punked, right? You got to rule out the hoax. You got to almost assume it until you can prove otherwise. But the fact that everybody was locked down, with the exception of us, and no other cars around, we would go out to this one area, pitch black, and I mean, I couldn't see the hand in front of my face. we weren't allowed to turn on any lights or anything. Initially, there were 3 of us that went out. And this gentleman, this native friend of mine, would call out in the darkness in his native tongue. He would say, "Oh ho, kage," which means "hello, friend." And he would do this a number of times, cupping his hands to his mouth and yelling out into absolute pitch blackness. And I'll be damned if within probably 30 seconds or so, all of a sudden I would see pair of lights that looked awfully like eyes. And these weren't stationary lights. They would move to the left, to the right. The head would turn left or right, so you'd only catch one eye putting off this light. I was dumbfounded as to explain it, which I would later, after doing a little more thorough research. But I saw at times 2 or 3 different individuals at the same time, moving independent of each other. You could see them blinking. It was fantastic, and it wasn't just the eye shine, but it was the vocalizations that accompanied it in a very wide range of sounds they made as individuals. One in particular, I remember the first night we went out. Was the most amazing vocalization I've ever heard, in that it was extremely loud, a language I did not understand, but words just the same, because what I heard really was reminiscent of a song, if you will. It went on for 5 or 6 seconds. Again, very loud, louder than any human can generate, very high pitched, which led me to believe it was a female. But in that 6-second period, it changed in volume. It changed in notes. It changed in tone, and it would stop, and then about 10 seconds later, start right back up again. And what was fascinating, if that wasn't fascinating enough, was that every time she did this, and it was done 4 times within less than a minute. Each and every time, it was the exact same tune, to the beat, to the sound, to the whole rhythm. Though it repeated itself 4 times, which is very important, because we're not talking some random scream or yell or whoop or some of the things we associate with these things. We're talking a song, and when something repeats itself, then it becomes a language, or at least there's some meaning embedded in that. And I have to tell you, it wasn't scary at all. In fact, it was quite beautiful and welcoming, if you would. Excuse me. But I kid you not, we went to out in the field on the res Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I think it was, I want to say, a Thursday that we went and visited a second site about a little over 4 miles away. Again, very remote, and had activity there as well. So it blew my mind that not just that the whole eye shine thing is something that is real, but this repetitive visitations, and the fact that my friend was able to literally call them in, that a relationship had been built over a period of over 3 years, to where he was able to do that. And I've actually sent other parties out there, including a documentary team. I told him, I said, you know me, I don't lie, and I'm telling you what I saw, and I could pretty much assure you that the odds are very high that if you go out there and I could arrange it, that you're going to witness what I did, and they have, and they did. In fact, they called me from the field one night that said, "We're out here now, and it's happening." So, so that's fantastic. So I ended up getting on a plane and going, "All right, Todd. Now that you get your butt handed to you, you have to explain that." And so I did a real deep dive into the science behind night vision, and there are certain. See, another one of my kind of rules is if you're going to tell me that the Bigfoot can fly and shoot flames out its butt, then you're going to have to show me another species that can do that, and then we can have a starting point. And so, yeah, with some research and digging, I did find out that indeed certain animals, depending on the thickness of the tapetum lucidum, a crystalline layer in the back of the eye of animals that have night vision. Certain animals can literally pull in ambient light that we don't see on our level because we're limited as to what we can see in the dark. They can pull in lunar light or starlight, zodiac light, and amplify it several times, giving them night vision. But in the process, as a byproduct, they can literally amplify that light to the point that we can actually see it.
Yeah,
So
I believe that too. I've always said they had light gathering eyes.
well, they do, and again, they're not the
Mm.
only species that does that.
Right.
So, we do have a basis of that happening with other species.
So I had a question, and I think the reason by the question is someone from the medical field that's very well educated without me saying what he does. He says, "Do you think that you can get the acknowledgement or the protection without an actual body to study?" So he's not saying, he's not one of those rednecks that wants to go out and shoot and blow stuff up. If you were on my property today, they were blowing stuff up all in the woods. So that
Yeah.
some of those rednecks, but he's asking for medical and scientific reasons.
So, that's a good question. In the past, it was expected, and we're going back, several hundred years when expeditions would go out, whether it be overland in the new country or overseas to new lands. They always brought a botanist and a biologist and a geologist and a historian just to catalog the new worlds that they were exploring. And it was required that a type specimen would have to be brought back, and they would, without even thinking, would kill a gorilla or a lion or whatever if it hadn't been already established. They needed that proof, and uh, the not just a species, but in many cases they wanted a male and female of each species. So fast forward to today, what do we have? We've got some new tools that are at our that are available to us, and as time goes on, they become a little bit more affordable. One of the things that I experimented with back in 1998, I had put together an expedition not far from where I had my encounter in '93 at the base of Saddle Mountain. I set up an 8-day expedition and was very fortunate to have both Peter Byrne and Ron Moorhead as my my research team, and working with the North American Science Institute, I was able to get my hands on a modified tranquilizer gun, a dart gun, if you will, that would normally be used, obviously, to tranquilize animals. In this case, it was retro. Pardon?
Like ketamine?
Yeah, that's one that could be used. But again, it's difficult to deal with, figure out what sort of dosages you need on an animal that we really don't understand. But in any event, this gun was retrofitted with what you call biopsy darts, and a biopsy dart. Basically, if you can envision a regular needle on a syringe, and then you were to take it and cut the point off of it, to where now you have a hollow needle with a fairly blunt end, and that the end of that needle is actually surgically sharpened to extremely micro fine precision. And inside that needle are some little wire barbs that face backwards toward where you'd be firing it. And the idea was that this dart would hit any animal, like it could be a dog, whatever. It would hit and almost immediately fall out and allow the animal to run off. And in that particular case, what you end up with is a nice core sample, if you will, of the epidermal, dermal, and fatty tissues, and perhaps some blood and other tissue that remains with the dart. So that could have been acceptable. The hard part there is to get within range of something like that, and just practicing with it. The 22 caliber charge is not very big, and a fairly heavy dart. You'd have to get within 100 feet of it to actually be able to hit it. But it was just one of the things that we tried.
You would also have to pre-guesstimate the weight, because if you don't get that weight right, and when that tranquilizer hits that animal, I know when I worked in the animal world and we would have to hit them with ketamine, we would always make sure it was in an enclosed area, because they could run so far and even drown if we lost sight of them.
Well, again, in this case, there was no drugs involved whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was just a dart that could hit an animal and collect a sample for DNA testing.
So you're talking about the
this.
same kind of darts. I'm sorry, you're talking about the same kind of darts you would use to penetrate from the 22. That's where I got mixed up at. Yeah. Okay. I'm
similar.
Sorry.
Anyway,
just a core sample is all you're getting.
Exactly, and that should suffice.
Bigfoot.
Now, what's interesting to note is in I believe it was 2006. I mentioned earlier the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Their job is to describe and name and monitor the health of new species and obviously existing known species. In 2006, and I could be wrong on that, I've got it in my notes, but that there for the very first time accepted a very close-up, clear photograph of a new subspecies they had enough photographs, enough angles on it, very clear that for the very first time they accepted and named a new subspecies based specifically on a picture.
Wow.
And it's kind of it's exciting in one sense, and the other, with AI and Photoshop and all these other, where photos can be digitally modified or even just wholesale created, photographs are going to be a hard sell. But there are ways that photographic forensic technicians can tell whether photos have been modified. But it was exciting to find out that, yeah, for the first time, they were able to describe a brand new subspecies of animal, and so who knows? Get some really, really, really good clear shots. Suffice to say, I believe it is inevitable that in one way or another, we will come across forensic evidence, whether it be of a live animal or one that is deceased recently, or one that you know uh, may have been dead for some time. Uh, I truly believe it's inevitable. It won't. It just can't go on forever before one of them is either hit by a car or shot by a poacher, or just dies of old age, disease, or injury. It happens to everybody. So um, I think it's inevitable that we will have that evidence in time. But what I'm trying to do is kind of get ahead of the game a little bit with this protection
Mhm.
piece, because if we can put if we can position ourselves with the concept that these things do indeed exist, then we're going to be in a better position to deal with it if and when a body is produced, and have some contingencies in place, rather than having the whole world, you know, up in arms about that discovery. So um, that's why I'm just kind of thinking the end game, because it won't be the end. A lot of people think, well, yeah, once they're found, it'll be the end of. No, it'll be the beginning. It'll be a new chapter, if you will, and you can be sure that all these naysaying scientists that have been uh, refusing to get involved, if not ridiculing us that are us citizen scientists, are going to be the first ones to step up and go, "I knew it." uh, how do I get on the team? So that's when it'll go. It'll transition to more of academic exercise with some big guns and no pun intended. But all the toys and things at their disposal that we don't have, just or if nothing else, just
Mhm.
financially. But yeah, and it won't be just the United States. There will be scientists coming in from all over the world, and that area where the body is found, or the specimen is known to have been, will be quarantined, I believe, at least off limits to anybody but scientists. And why not get ahead of the game, put things in motion, say, okay, so it's not such a shock, if you will.
I have, yeah, I have two comments right quick.
Sure.
Lavarney says, I believe they do have a body, but society isn't ready for the truth. And Crystal, a cryptid Crystal says society needs the truth, a wake up call so people start getting real. They both, I agree with both of them. I do think that the government knows more than what they're telling us, but it may not be a priority to them. So, do you have opinions on that?
I do, and I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big conspiratorialist when it comes to things like this, things of nature, yeah, other things, money, power, yeah, a whole nother thing. But when it comes to species recognition, whatnot, there's only so much the government can do. Unless you're going to tell me that behind every rock and tree out in the mountains and the forests that there's some agent waiting for somebody to tag and bag a Bigfoot so they can take it away from them. It's kind of ludicrous. But if you look at it from a government perspective, okay, you've got options. And with each of the options, you have consequences. So I'll play the government. Okay. I may or may not know or suspect, at least, at the very least, that there is a species out there that does exist, or we highly suspect it exists. Do they? I don't believe they have a body. To be honest with you, but I do believe they have evidence, perhaps. But let's just play along. On one hand, as a government official, say a secretary of the Department of the Interior, you have a choice. A, come out with what you know, whether it's a body or enough evidence to corroborate the existence of the species. Either you release that today, or option B, do nothing. Well, if I know that if I release information that will put people on edge as to that these creatures are out there and do exist, that there are going to be some negative consequences. That's for sure. With option B, there are absolutely zero consequences if the government just lets things play out. So, given those choices, if you were the government, unless you had something incredibly obvious and tangible with multiple eyewitnesses to the affair, then perhaps just letting things ride is a whole lot less disruptive, if you will. And like you say, they have higher priorities. So again, I really don't buy into the conspiracy thing, because again, I believe it's inevitable they're going to be found, and it's not going to be necessarily the government. It's going to be Joe Blow out there hiking down some trail that comes across something that, and game over, or I should say game on. And what was the second question?
I'm not sure. I know Joni asked about 30 minutes ago if you think they live in the desert where water is scarce. And I can't think of the second question I asked, but I know she's been waiting a while to ask that question.
Yeah, they have sightings just north of Mesa, Arizona, and I ran into stuff out there hunting, but they stay near water, but they can live in the desert.
Let me
well,
see if
I was really surprised.
That.
My son was actually he was in the Marines and trained at 29 Palms, not far from that area. People, when they think Arizona, just think desert, flat, hot desert. Well, there's a lot of Arizona, as you know, especially in the northern parts of that are very mountainous and very heavily timbered. And I've actually done some research there, just outside of Peyton, Mount Pelee area, or Payson, I think.
Payson, yeah.
Yeah, so it was the closest town to where I needed to get, which is an area called Glen Gowan at the base of Mount Pelee that had a number of sightings, and I had some hand-drawn maps, and I was meeting another researcher who's since passed on. And we were going to work that area. The Mongolian Rim is another area, kind of between Payson and Scottsdale, or excuse me, Flagstaff rather. Very mountainous, very heavily timbered. So I did speak to a Native American who used to live in Mexico, and told me that his elders had mentioned that at one time Bigfoot ranged as far south as Central America. But he was convinced that they have been migrating generationally, migrating further and further north. But yeah, I went down to Joshua Tree National Park, which is, I don't know if you know where that's at, but it's all great. Yeah, it's all rocks and
Like
desert and the
scrub,
really cool
like a
looking.
scrub area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I stopped at the park entrance, and as I'm walking into through this vestibule area, there's a bulletin board on the wall, and I noticed this kind of unusual drawing, kind of looked something like a Bigfoot, and I went over and looked at it and read it, and I'll be danged. The one of the park rangers was going to be giving a talk that evening at a specific point in the park about the Yucca Man. And so of course I inquired about it. I go, can I talk to the guy that's going to give this talk? I'm very curious, and I told him what I was all about, and I eventually caught up with the guy out in the field. But he goes, yeah, the Yucca Man is what they call them. What the natives have called them for years, and they had sightings as recently as the year before. I know you told me about finding a very large handprint the size of a first baseman's glove, if you will, on the side of a van. One of the guests had got contacted the park, and they came out and found both tracks and this huge handprint. So who knows? Who knows? I mean, these things are incredibly adaptable. They've had to be the survivors that they've become, and to be able to adapt not just to environment and climate changes that have occurred over millennia, but also, like I say, the encroachment of Native Americans 23,000 years ago to the encroachment of Western civilization, which had to be a huge shock to their culture, their way of life, when they saw how quickly this new variety of humans came in and pretty much decimated the old version. So they're survivors. They are able to adapt, and it doesn't surprise me that they can survive in some pretty crazy areas, some pretty unhospitable areas, that at least as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, so definitely survivors. Can we go back to your sighting? I have had a question I wanted to ask you. Do you think those three creatures you saw were checking out what the explosion had done, or could they have been living under rocks around there? Maybe got concussed?
Well, I will say this: if anything was within, let's just say, a human was within, yeah, 1,000 yards
Ooh.
of that area, there's a very high chance that that would be the last Fourth of July they ever witnessed. So whether or not we may have injured or concussed one of them in the process, I don't know. I think that's highly speculative. But what I will say is I do believe that these three individuals were scouting, if you will, surveilling our activity in order to try to keep ahead of us, or at least out of our way, when they saw what we were able to rot there 2 times before, these massive explosions. So yeah, it's really kind of interesting when you think about it, that any animal, any natural animal, including humans, that were within seriously a mile of one of those explosions, you would think that they would go the complete opposite direction.
That's what I
Right?
was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, a deer, a bear, a cougar, an elk, I don't care what it is. The last thing you're going to do is head toward the scene of the crime. And yet, within an hour or so, these individuals were able to set aside what you would think would be an innate sense of fear to come and check out what we were doing. And to me, uh, that spells intelligence, and I'll tell you why. Because they were curious, they needed answers to something they didn't understand, and curiosity is the need to know and do some fact finding, and the need to know uh, is what intelligence is all about, right? So the fact that they were able to, like I say, put aside that fear factor because it was more important that they find out what was going on, who was doing what, where are they at now. Uh, so I find I find that whole thing rather telling in regards to their intelligence. I mean, like I said, a bobcat isn't going to come back to figure out what's going on, right? A woodpecker is not going to fly back to investigate anything, you know. But whatever the case, this species, these individuals, put aside their concern for their safety because it was more important to find out what we were up to.
Was that the first time you guys used that as a training area?
Have I lost you?
Was that the first time you guys used that as a training area?
Can't hear you.
I can
How about
hear
Can you hear me now?
I can hear now. Could you hear me at all?
Yeah.
Oh,
Was that the first? Was that the first time you guys used that area as a training area?
No, as I recall, we would go up there annually because so on the base at Camp Rylea where we were stationed, we had an area designated for doing low scale blasts. Okay, maybe a block of C4, hand grenades, whatever. We had an area where we could play around with the small stuff, but when it came to these larger, hundreds of pounds of explosives, uh, let's just say these explosives would have broken every window on the base. These were very, very large, full scale, uh, exercises. So, yeah. So
Did
to
you,
answer your question, yeah, we did. We had access that once a year. We would go up there and do that.
Todd, did they always do those explosives the same way? One,
No.
then another, and another? Oh, okay.
Well, you got to understand, each one of these rock quarries had its own real time scenario, wartime scenario. What we do as combat engineers can be boiled down into two words: mobility, counter mobility. Our job is through the use of explosives and to a degree heavy equipment. Our job is to make sure our movement element, whether it's a company or a platoon or a brigade, that they are able to get through their path that they want to go. And if there's something, for instance, at the second site where these made themselves known, they had set up. There was a minefield set up. Anti-tank mines were distributed all throughout this rock quarry, and our job was to set up a ring main that would go through that minefield and attach detonation cord to that ring main and on to a block of C4, which we had placed near these anti-tank mines. In a mine clearing scenario, you don't need to take out the entire minefield. All you have to do is blow a path through that, so that, and you mark it so that vehicles can get through it. And conversely, we'll put in minefields as well. C4 we use to blow up bridges, for instance, because C4 will get 6 times hotter than the sun for a fraction of a second and melt steel like butter, which is what we did at the first quarry, for instance. We had steel I-beams that were to represent steel I-beams that hold up a truss on a bridge. And our job was to cut these I-beams with plastic explosives. So yeah, each different scenario had its own training platform, if you will. And the final one was a cratering charge where we had 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate. The cratering charge, as it would indicate, is where we would say blow a road in half. Again, that's the counter mobility part. We would destroy a road with explosives so the enemy couldn't come in that direction. If we suspected they were wanted to come that way, we would do that. So yeah, and each time it was different. We would go from quarry to quarry, but the scenarios would change just depending on the training.
Out of your 31 years of research, can you hear me now better?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Out of your 31 years of research, Todd, with everything you've been out in the field, you've witnessed, you've experienced, the stories that you have gathered, out of the 31 years of research, what stands out in your mind the most, and what do you think that what message do you want to get out to the community the most as a result of that? I'm sorry, that's a quirky question, but.
Well, that's a big one. First and foremost, that we don't know everything as much as we'd like to believe we do. The human race tends to be arrogant in that regard. Hell, 70% of the earth is ocean, and we hardly have scratched the surface of that. So there is a lot of habitat, very dense, heavily forested habitat. I can attest to the Pacific Northwest, millions and millions and millions of square miles from Northern California right into Canada, both the Coast Range as well as the Cascade Range. And even here where I'm at now, I was really surprised how much activity is here. But I live on a ranch that sits at about 2,200, 2,210, I believe, is the altitude here, and I'm on the highest point in the Ozark Mountains, within 30 miles of where my ranch sits. So I have an unobstructed view up to 50 miles in any direction on a clear day, and it is nothing but thick, rolling, very dense, mostly hardwoods. There are some evergreens, some pines and cedars, but it'd be real easy to get turned around and lost here. So, but back to the point, we don't know everything, and to keep an open mind. It's hard. I get that. We tend to, we're raised to believe that whatever is important enough for us to know will be told to us, and have a nice day. When in fact, there's a lot out there in this world to discover. And I would encourage people to get out there, do your homework. There's plenty of, I've got over 300 books just on subject of animal, but not just Bigfoot, but animal behavior, animal psychology, evolution, tons of stuff you can get online or the actual hard copy books. But getting out there, one of the things that struck me, having been a doubter and not having seen any evidence in all the places in that very area that I had hunted for deer and elk, was why haven't I seen evidence, tracks, something? the creatures themselves. And an interesting thing happens when you have an encounter like I had. It opens your eyes, it opens your mind, and it blew me away when I went out with this new mindset that okay, these things are out here now. Finding evidence became a lot easier. You know what I mean? Uh, I came across a whole bunch of stuff that had I just been deer hunting or elk hunting or bear hunting prior to that sighting, I would have just shrugged it off as it can't be that because that can't be right. And then when you get out there and you know that not only can be but it is, then you start seeing the evidence. And there's a ton of evidence out there. Tons of I'm looking at my collection of dozen more tracks that I've casted, and I've got hair samples yet that have yet to be analyzed. One from Texas I'm looking at right now. But you know, I've said it before, and like I said, this happened to me, I believe, for a reason. But the consequences of what happened to me have been nothing but good. The fact that it opens your mind, that you can see things that because you're not just locked into, you know, if it does exist, I would have been informed. You know, I would have got the memo. But it's helped me in terms of motivation, in terms of creativity, in terms of confidence, in terms of being able to get out socially. You know, I've been prone to say that I went in search of Bigfoot, and in the end, I found myself, and I believe that to be true because it changes a person, and if you use it that experience for good, then it will change you for good, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think it's important that people realize that this is still a very fluid, a very active, and ever changing, wonderful world out there. And there are still things to be discovered. And if mainstream science doesn't want to roll up their sleeves and get involved, then fine. It's open season for citizen scientists like you and I. And I think that's pretty cool.
Wow,
That keeps me busy every day.
that was pretty incredible summary. That's pretty incredible summary. I don't see any questions left in the chat, and for those that don't know, O-line cryptid should be on. So if you guys jump over there, but you have quite a few people here. As a matter of fact, most of the audience is from either Louisiana or Arkansas.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so put your information, your contact information out there, where you're going to be, your appearance is going to be. I think they were saying you're going to have one in Louisiana and I think one in Arkansas coming up.
Yeah. So just a little shameless plug here. The best way to contact me, I think that's important, especially if I've got some neighbors out here, because I am a newbie here in this area. Although I have located 19 sightings within 40 miles of my ranch already, at least historically. I'm very excited about working in the Ozarks. But if somebody needs to get a hold of me, my personal email address is American Primate, all just one word, American Primate, Primate at AOL. Yeah, I'm that other guy that still uses AOL. Otherwise, I do have a website. and that is AmericanPrimate.org.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly under construction and ever changing. But to your point, yes, I am scheduled to speak in Stillwell, Oklahoma, on the 8th of March. And then I will be speaking at the Fouke Monster Festival in Fouke, Arkansas. I want to say April 23rd, 24th, that weekend, put on by the great Craig Woolheater. And I've got some other things lined up for Ozark, Missouri, or Springfield, really. Ocean Shores, Washington. I've got my own kind of special conference that I put on called Beachfoot. It's kind of a play on words, obviously, Bigfoot and the coast, the ocean, because that's where I had my sighting. Beachfoot is the only gathering of its type. It's invitation only, not open to the public. Strictly researchers. Max attendance is 100. We don't make any money on it. It's just something that I came up with in 2008 that I thought, what would it be like to get all these people, these great researchers together in one spot? And I came up with this concept, this brainchild called Beachfoot. This year will be our 18th and final Beachfoot retreat, if you will. 18 years is a pretty long run, and it's just financially and logistically obviously difficult for me to herd the cats from 2,200 miles away. So I'm going to put on this last one. It'll be on the 4th of July. What perfect day for a grand finale, right?
Absolutely.
So that'll be the 4th of July back in Oregon. Anyway, visit my Facebook page. I have one specifically for Beachfoot. If you go through the photo gallery, you'll see everybody. There's anybody in Bigfooting has been there at one time or another. A lot of regulars, and unfortunately, many guests that have passed on. Peter Byrne is one that comes to mind. Out of 17 Beachfoot gatherings, I think he's been in at least 14 of them.
Wow.
Ron Moorhead is another one that's been a regular. And yeah, so anyway, I'm keeping busy in my supposed retirement. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, American Primate at AOL.com, and of course visit the website AmericanPrimate.org.
We've been putting that up for you, or Blue has
thank
been
you.
putting it throughout the show. You've got some really good people there in Arkansas. We wish you luck. We hope you come back one day and just do another show, because I know we ran you dry. We were all over the place, but that's just how we roll.
Oh, we just
Welcome to
scratched the
South,
surface.
sir.
Right.
We just scratched the surface, Victoria. There's I'm finally writing a book after over 30 years, and I don't know how I'm going to put 30 plus years into 500 or 600 pages, but I've swore I'm going to get it out here before the sometime this spring, and so you might be looking for that. The working title right now is Living Large: Bigfoot in America. That may change, but yeah, that's something I've got to get off my plate. So anyway, it's been great talking with you, and had a wonderful time. Sorry about the little glitch in the startup time, but it happens.
That's
no
okay.
worries.
We were talking about literally herding cats and how Don's cat needs to lose weight. So it's okay. Everybody waited around because they really wanted to hear what you have to say. Keep up the
Yeah.
good work. I'll let Don
thank
close
you.
it out.
I do have one. I do have one thing. When you were talking about hearing that Bigfoot create like a song. Hold on, I'll get it. Hear it. I recorded. I thought I didn't put my recorder out in time, and I had to go up into the woods late one night. So I set it, and on the way down, whenever I'm nervous out there, I always hum or sing to myself or make noise as I go down. About the time I get back to where I started, this was recorded. I didn't hear it that night, but the next day when I played the recording back, I heard this. When you said about the song there, I said, geez, I always thought that sounded like him mimicking me, humming going down the hill.
I just wearing my constructive skeptic hat would tend to believe that maybe an owl.
Well,
and I say that because there's a lot of owls can make a wide variety of sounds.
Right. Now I've got a lot of owl recordings that I sent to a guy in Syracuse University. He's supposed to be the leading expert in barred owls around here.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the recordings I sent to him, he said, I don't know what that is, but I can tell you what it isn't. It's not a barred owl. I mean, they come in. The most common thing they do is they'll scream.
Scream, we've got bards around here.
They follow it up with the owl, like, geez. Sorry.
Well, the barred owl will do what some people call "Who cooks for you?"
Right, right. Yeah, but they'll do.
Oh.
Yeah, stuff like that.
That's owl. That one's definitely owl.
That's the one that he said wasn't an owl. Owls don't scream like that.
That little follow-up sound that sounded like kind of a gurgle.
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard that before. That
right.
There's a couple of websites out there that you can go to that you can just simply do a search on it, but they've got complete libraries of recordings of pretty damn much any animal you can think of. But
right.
I don't know.
I've done all that. I've compared them to the barred owl. Now, one thing is, barred owls do not create echoes through the woods. I get like a 7-second echo on these recordings. These are loud. These are really loud.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I just
plus I do have footprints and I got other evidence. They surrounded my house with bones, and they would make lines of bones to my recorder from a deer kill. Their behavior, I've gotten a lot of. They left me rocks, and I've got a bunch of bones from them, and I couldn't figure out why they were leaving bones everywhere. And then I realized I had a big whalebone up on my house, and I said, "Geez, I wonder if that has anything to do with it." So. I haven't gotten any bones in a while, but I did take the bone down off my house. Yeah, it's constant. Like this area, I just moved in here, and for 15 years, I hunted mushrooms. So I was always in the darkest, wettest places. And that's where I started hearing weird stuff. Things were taking my mushrooms. And one day they bit into a mushroom and left it sitting right there with all the other ones. But yeah, I've got a few footprints, and there were 3 here, but now 3 different ones are here now.
Now, whereabouts in Maine are you at?
Not far from the coast, Belfast. I'm not far from there.
How far from Bangor?
30 miles south.
Oh, okay.
35.
All right.
Yeah, and it's a pretty heavily wooded area. I'm in a town of about 1,000 people. So
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
But
Yeah, we
people
did.
get more
We
people are
stopped
talking
over.
about it. Oh, go
We,
ahead. Sorry.
we stopped over in Bangor on our way to Iraq. That was one
Yeah.
of our refueling stops there. But
Right.
I remember flying in there and then just noticing how dense the forest was. Yeah,
Yeah, it's and more people around here are talking about it because I'm talking about it. I went to the town hall during a meeting with footcasts, and everyone used to laugh at me till I brought the footcasts in. But now people are talking about it more. I met an old guy he was 72. He had a sighting of two of them when he was 14 and never said a word. He just said he was waiting for somebody else to say something.
right.
And then finally I did. He came forth, and certain areas do have quite a bit of them.
Yeah,
You know,
I see that a lot where I get somebody to open up about it, and it's like, well, when did this happen? Oh, I was 13 at the time, and they're full grown, and it's like, well, who have you told? Nobody. So
right,
it's just like
right,
I feel sorry for them because I know how traumatic an event that is, not just uh, in general, but I mean it messes with your head to witness something like that, and to feel like you have to keep quiet about it and hold that traumatic um, and very sincere um, event. To have to keep it to yourself for fear of ridicule is it's kind of sad, to be honest with you. So hopefully, in
yeah,
my stepping outside the box and taking that
yeah,
risk for the team, maybe it'll encourage some other people to come out and share their
right,
information as well. Because every encounter has some component, some data point that we can use. I don't care if it's 100 years old. We can still get location, elevation, weather, climate.
mhm,
It's a lot of information. A lot of people don't think about moon phase and such. So anyway,
right. Yeah, in the human factor, I used to be on board with letting everybody know, release that they exist, but nowadays I don't think I think a lot of people are going to run out and try to kill one, whether trophy, fear, or just to say they did. There was a cat film down in Massachusetts, a mountain lion in the town of Easton. They put it on the news that weekend. 250 guys in the woods with guns trying to find this cat and kill it. And they ended up shooting an ocelot, and that was
yeah.
it.
It's
But
not the one
somebody,
on your screen, is it?
no, no. But just the human factor, I'm not quite on board with releasing that they exist now to everyone. You
Well, here's
know,
here's the thing. It as things stand right now, and just through sheer ignorance, it's open season on this species. And
right?
what could be worse than that? I
No,
mean,
I agree with the protection and all that, but to come out and just tell everyone they're real, yeah, I don't know. I do agree with the protection with laws and education and all that. But it's got to start with the kids because people have a mindset like around here, everybody has a gun. They shoot everything around here.
oh yeah, same here.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think it would be good. So I do understand some departments or organizations not saying anything. I do understand that. Do I like it? No.
Well,
I wish that there was a way to inform everyone. I don't think humans are quite ready.
and that's probably could be a factor that plays into it is until they get a firmer grasp of exactly what they're dealing with, it'd be premature to come out and say there's a big
Right.
hairy giant out there, and that's all we know.
Right.
So there's a right way to do this, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can get something established.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, Todd. I really appreciate your time. I've known of you for quite a while. I do remember hearing your encounter about 10 years ago. And I had a picture of it in my mind, you driving by a quarry and seeing the three creatures, but I didn't know anything before and after that. It had all left my mind.
Oh, I'll give you real quick. I know you're ready to wrap up, but I literally found this digging through my stuff because I moved from a 2,600 square foot house to a 1,400 square foot house. So my garage, I can't get any cars in there. It's all storage right now. But what I came across was photographs from that very day. I don't know if you can make out. So there's a log there, right? And what you see, those two green blocks there, that's plastic explosives. They weigh about 1.25 pounds each. Okay. I just couldn't believe I found these photos. So one of the things we did was to destroy, we cut an I-beam in half, but we also decided to cut this tree in half. And that's what you're seeing here is we're wrapping this tree with that white clay-like substance, which is composition 4 plastic explosives. And we pretty much turned that thing into bark dust. Here's some of the steel I-beam here. Nobody's seen these in like 30 plus years. Here's some more where we're setting the charges inside the channels of the I-beam. But yeah, I'm looking at these, I go, oh my God, that was the day. That was the day. Here's that log already. Well, here's that log already prepped to be blown up.
Oh, yeah.
And here's a very young me hurting my my troops, training them on how to work with explosives and whatnot. But yeah.
Have you looked through all the trees and bushes
So there
in
you
the
have
background?
There you have it.
Yeah.
You
We got
your
a
own.
treat tonight. Thank you. That was a wow. I feel special now, Todd.
I didn't even think about it till you mentioned it, and I'm looking over there. Oh shit, just showing the pictures. Anyway, guys, I've had a great time. Let's do it again if you find the time. I'm sure there's plenty more we can talk about. But I've really appreciated being on, and you guys have been great hosts. And like I say, I'm honored to be on.
Oh, thank you, Todd.
Awesome. You always have a seat at our table, sir. You have a blessed night.
All right, you as well.
Have a
Take
good
care.
night.